All right, welcome back, coaches. Glad to have you all back. I think we can all agree we are rocking and rolling here tonight. Starting out with Coach John Harbaugh from the Baltimore Ravens, won a Super Bowl, been the NFL Coach of the Year. Then we had a fantastic group discussion with three trailblazers, three women who are making tremendous progress and doing a fantastic job for their teams. Lori Locust of the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Jennifer King, the assistant running backs coach with Washington football team, and Mickey Grace, scouting and coaching with the Los Angeles Rams. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. But as mentioned earlier, Team Builder is giving away a 1-year platinum subscription and a 50-inch flat screen TV to go in your weight room. So make sure you check out the sponsors tab on Blitz 21 website and enter to win. And now that I've tantalized you with that 50-inch screen, I think it's time for me to introduce the co-founder of Team Builder, Mr. Hewitt Tomlin. Hewitt?
Thank you, Charles. These days, 50 inches, that may not be big enough. We might have to step it up here. Hi, everyone. Hewitt Tomlin here. I'm the CEO and founder of Team Builder. We are the platform for strength and conditioning at the high school, college, and professional level. I have the distinct honor of introducing our next speaker. He's a friend and a customer of mine, Coach Loren Landow. Coach Landow is a world-renowned movement and sports performance expert who's trained thousands of athletes of all ages and abilities, including over 700 athletes ranging from the NFL, NHL, MLB, UFC, WNBA, as well as Olympic medalists. He's now currently the head strength and conditioning coach for the Denver Broncos and maintains ownership of Landow Performance in Centennial, Colorado, which continues to train dozens of NFL draft prospects each and every year. Coach Landow.
Thank you for the great introduction, Hewitt. And Charles, thank you very much. Honored to be here and honored to be able to share a little bit of my ride with you guys. For me, I'm going to go into a screen share here in a little bit, but I want to give you just a quick breakdown on who I am. 25 years I've been in the industry. To me, it's about performance enhancement and the opportunity to maximize each athlete's ability. And so obviously we learn best from the school of hard knocks, and I definitely have. I'm going to go ahead and go into my screen share frame here. And hopefully I get this right. Give me 2 seconds from current slide and we should be ready to roll. There we go. Okay, so currently I'm with the Denver Broncos, but as Hewitt had said before that, I've worked with athletes of all sports. And for me, there's commonalities that I see within all those sports when we look at movement qualities and movement opportunities. I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a systems-based approach to movement. When we look at everything that we do in coaching, we typically narrow things down into systems. We don't just throw a dart blindfolded and decide what we're going to do. We have a system of how we look at different things. When I look at speed development, it's the same thing. I look at it as a system and a holistic mindset. This is a slide I use every time when I talk about speed development or anything training. And this is a slide based on, it's a metaphor based on perspective, ultimately. I have the 5 blind men and the elephant, and this is a parable, but at the end of the day, I use it as a metaphor to explain speed development. If you were to ask each one of these gentlemen what it is that they're touching or feeling, each one of them is going to give you a different response, a different answer. The unique thing about their answer is none of them are right and none of them are wrong. It's ultimately based on their perspective. But at the end of the day, they may be, because of the blindfold, they don't have a vision of the whole. So if we're looking at speed development, we could argue that maybe today, maybe I'm the gentleman who's grabbing the tail and I'm just going to give you one blip on the radar of some things that I do for speed development in a 45-minute talk. But at the end of the day, the gentleman at the tail, he might be talking about technique. The gentleman at the leg, he might be talking about plyometrics. The gentleman at the trunk might be discussing strength training and the utilization of velocity-based training for speed development. At the end of the day, all those pieces do matter. And for providing context today, I'm going to talk about the technical application and providing context to give your athletes the best chance to become faster in a window when I know most of us are limited on time. So going into the next slide, I'm a purist at heart when it comes to education of the human body. A lot of people think that speed development you can't teach it. To me, it's motor skill learning, it's motor skill acquisition. And to me, the unique thing is everything that we do in our field of education is ultimately about repetition. And it's repetition, but it's educationally based. And we learn it typically in chunks. And then we learn, to do things fluidly over time. This young man playing the piano didn't come out of the womb being able to play fluently. And then when we look at reading, we learned the alphabet, we learned words, and we learned how to put words into sentences. And then we ultimately use those sentences to develop paragraphs and stories. Well, mathematics, we learned mathematics and chunking concepts as well. And we learned concepts of addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, before we learn bigger and broader concepts. Well, to me, movement is the same thing. Movement, we have to look at it as all the previously mentioned educational classes or courses that we take. To me, we don't just happen to be a good athlete. There's some people who are genetically gifted, no doubt, but at the end of the day, these are things that can be taught. Can we make somebody an elite level sprinter? Well, we need to make sure that genetically that they have the right tools from that standpoint, but the right training ultimately is a big part of that. Again, this is a soapbox of mine as of recent, because a lot of people believe that these things are not teachable, and I believe 100% they are. Well, when we look at our fundamentals of learning linear abilities, speed development, we have to look at the things that tick in those boxes. To me, it's different skipping patterns. Skips are very, very important, and honestly, they're foundational to when we get to sprinting. I always tell my athletes, and I tell my coaches, or even people that I'm mentoring, if you do not have a good understanding of skipping, it's going to be very hard for you to maximize your sprint capability. Skipping provides us the ability to learn how to relax and move rhythmically, and also to best utilize the storage of elasticity. So when I look at my linear fundamentals, skipping is at the top of that. We have to talk about starting positions, and then ultimately acceleration. Acceleration is really the key driver in almost every sport, the ability to accelerate. From acceleration, we have something called transitional movements, and then we have maximal velocity, which is our top end speed. So this is just looking at all qualities in a straight line today to enhance that thing that we all love to talk about and see on Sundays and Saturdays, is speed. Then at the end of the day, we can also deduce it down to deceleration and backpedal. These are all skills too in a linear framework that also can be taught as well. So what are our goals to being faster? It's pretty simple if you're not a science guy or a math guy, it's pretty simple. I need to produce more force in less time. So force equals mass times acceleration. This is going to be a key tenet that we talk about, because there's going to be some drills that I do that are very force-based, and there's going to be some drills that are very acceleration-based or velocity-based. At the end of the day, there's no right or wrong. It's a matter of how do you put them all together and blend them. So more force in less time means, something called anticipatory firing. If I understand that the movement of the leg is a cycle, and I want to get to a high thigh punch position, I know the end position. So I now know that I've got to push through the ground and quickly recover. Instead of just letting my leg drift back, I'm going to purposely recover it just a tad sooner to get to my maximal loading position. So that's the less time. Recovery in the proper range of motion. Again, if we're looking at acceleration or top end speed, this has a different effect. When I'm looking at acceleration, I don't necessarily have a 90-degree thigh punch position relative to the ground. In acceleration, I might be 60, 65 degrees of an angle relative to the ground. And I'm going to show this in some videos that I have coming up, but recovery in the proper range of motion is key. And I'll discuss these concepts more when you can see live video. Force application. Where do I apply my force when I'm driving? Well, when I apply force in acceleration, I want to apply down and away. I want to drive behind the body. And when I'm at top end speed, I want to push straight down to the ground. And I'll show you the force application and the 4 tenets that I look for when I'm building a sprinter or building an athlete to be sprint-like. I have my 4 Ps that I'll get into. So at the end of the day, I have a series of athletes here that are going to show you common positions. Now, these positions, I didn't teach Philip Lindsay how to be a ball carrier in the NFL, but what I did do is I helped influence how Philip maybe attacks the ground, how he drives the ground, how he produces more force in less time, how he works on his anticipatory firing. As this trail leg is back here, how can he quickly recover that leg before the defender tries to swat at the leg and trip him up? There are unique things that we can teach the athletes to maximize their speed, but also give them some tactical awareness on the field. Now, same thing with these 2 backs. I have these 3 backs are backs I've worked with in the NFL draft process and throughout their sporting career. But the same thing, if we go back to the Philip Lindsay picture, and now we go back to the Austin Eckler picture on the left and the Christian McCaffrey picture on the right, even though these guys are all hitting a different cut, a different maneuver, there is something here that looks common. And the commonality is always the thigh punch position, the angle of the tibia, and the loaded position of the foot. Whether we were looking at Philip Lindsay breaking away from tackles, or these 2 guys who are about to evade a tackler. You see a unique sway in body position, but you see the consistency of biomechanics of what ultimately makes somebody successful in acceleration. When we look at football, football is a game, as I mentioned earlier, and most sports are, a game where acceleration trumps everything. Now, we love top-end speed and we drive after top-end speed all the time, but ultimately the things we're looking at is how good can I be in my first 5 yards? Most athletes are pretty inefficient in 5 yards because most coaches will blow a whistle and say, we're running a 30, we're running a 40, and the athletes tend to kind of skip or lead in or build up, and they never actually hit masterful acceleration with great intent. Well, part of the intent is how we get to unique positions of posture. When I look at a posture position, his head's a little bit down for my liking, but I would look at ear, shoulder, hip, knee, and ankle. Those are my alignment positions when I look at drive. Now, if I'm looking at his back leg or the leg that was now recovering, I'm looking for a good punch position. I want to make sure that he punches the thigh forward. Again, it's maybe 90 if we turn the torso, but relative to straight up and down, he's at about 65 degrees, maybe 70 degrees of hip angulation. Now from here, we look at the knee joint is at 90 degrees, and we look at the foot as cocked in dorsiflexion. And ultimately, this is setting him up to have a summation of joint angles at 90 degrees. A 90-degree joint angle is the most efficient joint angle to generate torque. And so as we look at his body position is here. And now we look at the thigh, and the thigh is actually 90 degrees to the body position. So if we look at the hip joint, the knee joint, and the ankle joint, we have 3 joints that are at 90 degrees. And when this athlete strikes down and back into the ground, he's going to have a maximal amount of torque into the ground. Again, how do we produce more force? By setting up with the right angles. So how do we do this? Well, we find drills that provide context of my 4 Ps: posture, position. So right now we have posture from ear, shoulder, hip, knee, and ankle. And then we have position, which is the thigh position being punched forward at 90 degrees, the position of the tibial shank, and the foot in dorsiflexion. When the foot is in dorsiflexion, it's like a rubber band being pulled back. He's got a lot of elastic power to that. So now the next one we look at is placement. Placement, where is the foot hitting relative to the hips? Well, I said earlier that in acceleration, we want to drive behind us, but this is a drill. This isn't sprinting. So in the drill, he's going to hit right below the hips. His placement is below the hips, and he's striking on the forefoot or the ball of the foot. He's not hitting on the heels. He's bouncing off the ball of the foot. So again, one more time. Posture, position, placement, and the last P, patterning. Patterning is just a rhythmic motion. He's got a rhythmic tempo to him. When you see rhythm and when you see arrhythmic, you know the difference. You don't have to be exceptional with music to see rhythm or to see a rhythm. But paying attention to those 4 Ps is going to help you along the way. And these can be used just in warm-up drills. Again, I use the ball above the head to keep the athlete more vertical, and I take the arms out of some of these drills to minimize confusion of motion early on. And I'll do the same thing with a PVC. Again, not everybody has access to med balls like that, but they might have PVCs, a broomstick, a towel that they can put around here. And all I'm trying to do is disassociate the arm action from the leg action. A lot of athletes, when they get their arms involved, the arms screw up a lot of their rhythm. I want to make sure that I take the arms away and I just pay attention to what's happening to the rhythm of the lower half. Now we take this drill to a little bit more complex. I have a whole series of wall drills that we do, but at the end of the day, the same theme is happening. I have posture position from ear, shoulder, hip, knee, and ankle. That allows me good force production. But now, as I said with acceleration, driving behind the body is key to generating more force. We talked about the simple math equation, more force in less time. The athlete driving in the proper direction is key for more force. The 90-degree angles are key for that as well. He's got the loaded feet into dorsiflexion. So when he hits the ground, it's like a stiff diving board and he's exploding off the ground. Again, we'll do these types of drills in 1 counts, 2 counts, 3 counts, and then I'll do a rapid fire. These drills are extremely exhausting, so don't do them for necessarily time. They're very exhausting, and there's a high element of neural fatigue that can happen with these drills as well. Again, also, if you have an athlete who hasn't been running in a long time, that's a pretty significant contraction on the calf and Achilles. So you want to make sure you progress these in a smart periodized model. So now we're playing around with this drill and we're making it a little bit more sprint-like. Now we take it into a partner-resisted march. Now he's got to apply force to the ground. So the drill beforehand was really looking at the turnover, and now we're looking to apply more force into the ground. The person who's resisting on the backside, this is critical. They've got to get a very intentional resistance. The person on the front end, he is thinking about punching the knee forward. If he doesn't punch the knee forward, he can't drive back behind him very well. The other thing that really sets aside acceleration versus top end speed mechanics, what is his heel doing right now? His heel is not coming up near his butt at all. Athletes make big time mistakes in change of direction and or in short distance acceleration by pulling their heel up to their butt. They've maybe looked at models of top end speed and they didn't know where to apply them. In acceleration, we want to have a low heel carry. You see he's punching the knee forward. The heel is not coming up anywhere near his rear end. He's punching forward. He's maximizing angles at the knee, hip, and the ankle to maximize torque into the ground. Now we start implementing the arms. Now the arms are driving back. He's swinging them forward, but we want to make sure we're driving them back. The more violent the arm action back, the more violent the hip extension, especially in acceleration. Acceleration is different for every athlete. It can be anywhere between 5 yards to 20 yards. depending on who your athlete is. Small athletes that have high vertical jumps, your defensive backs, guys that carry a high vertical jump can typically hold their acceleration patterns longer. Those are the guys you see at the NFL Combine who can accelerate even past 20 yards, maybe almost all the way through the entire 40. So relative strength, meaning what your vertical jump is, will ultimately allow one to hold a lean better in acceleration. So once we get past this drill, now we get a blended drill of velocity and frequency, or I'm sorry, velocity and force. So now he's trying to drive into the ground at a faster rate, but he's still trying to apply great force into the ground. The 4 Ps are still in effect here. It's just a little bit different because it's happening faster and there's a quicker exchange of limbs. If we were to draw a line in freeze frame from his ear down to his ankle, he'd have the straight line of posture. If we looked at position, we'd see every time the knee is purposely positioning forward. If we look at placement, he is placing the foot, or he's driving back behind the hips on the ball of the foot. And if we look at his patterning, he's got a high element of rhythm to every step he takes. Again, this drill is done in 5 yards. A resisted drill for 5 yards on the watch is about anywhere between 2 to 3 seconds, which is going to be long past what typical acceleration distances will be without resistance. The next slide here, this is a slow motion video, but I want you to pay attention. He does have a posterior resistance. He's going to rock into the start. He's going to punch forward, punch in the knee, driving back. Look at the heel carry, it's low, but he's hitting all the same angles that we were hitting in every drill so far. Again, extend through the hip, punch the knee forward, extend through the back leg. The key to acceleration is being patient enough to drive and get extension. Most athletes become very choppy because they want to get to their next step. You have to be patient to maximize your power. When we look at acceleration, we spend more time on the ground than we do in the air. That is completely reversed when we look at top end speed. I spend more time in the air than I do on the ground when we look at top end speed. So acceleration, punch, drive, extend back. I'm using a tool here. This is called a run rocket, but you can use a resisted sled, whatever it is you want, you can use. I'm just trying to provide a little bit of resistance. The resistance isn't too much. If the resistance was too heavy, his torso would shoot vertical. If his torso would shoot too vertical, that would create suboptimal angles at the thigh, at the knee, and at the ankle. So I want to make sure if I'm doing something that is resisted in nature, that it has the same 4 Ps that I've been looking for in all of my drilling of my technical model. Now, I'll also utilize the PVCs here. A lot of athletes have a challenge of punching the knees forward in their acceleration. As I've mentioned before, they want to pull their heels straight up to their butt. If you give an athlete a PVC, and if they're one of those athletes who does pull their heels straight up to their butt, they will fall on their face on this drill. So the PVC is almost like an auto regulation of getting the correct mechanics. Punch and drive, extend and push, making sure that the knees punch forward and he's driving back behind. Again, utilizing the PVC because the arms create a counterbalance and they can give an athlete a false sense of their own balance. Having the PVC on the shoulders will force them, one, to punch correctly, but also not to drift too far or pull that heel up to their rear end. Again, as I said, if the athlete pulls their heel up to their rear end on this drill, a lot of times they'll end up on their face. They only have to make that mistake one time. Now, here's a way you can do it in your bigger group settings. These are what I call waterfall starts. Waterfall starts are a great way for me to look from the side and pay attention to the positions that I want out of my athletes. one guy goes and the next guy goes, and I can just look from the side and I can see, are we hitting the right torso angles? Are we punching the thigh up? Are we getting too much heel drift up to the rear end? If you look through this film, the only guy who really pulls his heel to his rear end is the very last one. It's not too bad. And the reason why it looks worse than it is because his tibia, or his lower leg, is just about as long as his femur. And so it creates the illusion that he's pulling his heel up to his rear end, when in actuality, it's not happening to the degree that you might think. Again, this helps shoot them out of the cannon, loading them up, pushing them out, and again, firing out of the cannon. Now, here's another great drill for force application. This is a 3-step bound to sprint. Bound, 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 attack. Why the 3-step bound? Because the bounding action mimics the joint angles that I want when I sprint and acceleration. So this is a drill that I implement quite a bit with my athletes. If you actually watch this, if you watch the big gentleman in the red shorts who's about to go, that's Ryan Jensen from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when he was coming out for the draft prep. So this is a drill I'll even have some of our big D linemen do as well, and O linemen. Again, teaching them how to drive the ground. It's 3 steps of a bound and then attack. Because to me, part of acceleration is creating the intent to attack. Part of the attack is being in the proper angles. The other part of the attack is violent down into the ground, hammer down and back. Now, I've just spent the first 22 minutes or 20 minutes going over acceleration. Well, now we've got to look at what is considered top end speed, or what I termed earlier of maximum velocity. So anytime we look and analyze movement, I'm going to look at my 4 Ps again. If I have this video or this photo of Usain Bolt, and if I were to draw a line from ear, shoulder, hip, and if the leg was right underneath his hip where this leg will be in a moment's time, he would be at that straight line as the center of mass is going over that foot. So again, posture is happening. Position, now I've got about a 90-degree angle relative to the torso, which my torso is now vertical. Now I have a 90-degree angle at the thigh. I've got a 90-degree angle at the knee. I've got a 90-degree angle at the ankle. Now from this position, I usually tell my athletes, I don't overcomplicate it. A lot of coaches will say, swipe back at the ground. I just tell them to drive straight down. Think about once the thigh is in this position, it's a hammer, and I'm just trying to drive straight down into the track with that hammer. Again, I've got the summation of force at the 3 joint angles that are at 90 degrees. That will allow for maximal torque into the track. But I have to look at these. I look at sprint mechanics at top end speed in phases. When I look at them in phases, it makes it easier for me to see where the potential movement errors may be. The first phase that I discuss is residual. And residual is just Usain Bolt is towing off right here, and he's going to initiate his recovery action. So he's towing off, and it's a moment in time. He's at extension. He's going to tow off, and now he's going to start his recovery. Well, part of the recovery now is backside. The first thing that happens is Usain Bolt's heel is now going to drift up toward his rear end. As it does so, his knee is flexing. As the heel gets close underneath the hip, he's going to pop the thigh forward, which turns to front side recovery. Front side recovery is ultimately where he ends up on the right leg here. From front side recovery, this is a transition. This is another moment in time, just like residual. My transition is now my leg is, my front side recovery is forward, and now I've got a block at 90 degrees, and now I'm going to start getting ready for my ground preparation. So I'm going into what's called negative thigh acceleration. My thigh was positive moving forward. Now I want my thigh to drive down toward the track and then ultimately behind the track as I get ready for another revolution. So one more time, residual, which then goes into backside recovery, which then leads into front side recovery, which then goes into ground preparation as the thigh starts coming down to the ground, and then ground contact. At ground contact, I'm not going to be straight-legged. If you were to see a still shot, almost every athlete has a relative bend or tilt of the pelvis or the knee when they're at ground contact. It's a lot of force that they're overcoming. And so you'll see a compression down into the track, and then you get a propulsion off of the track on the next stride. The other part that I'm looking at is arm action. Look at the front hand, it's coming up to the cheek. Back hand is coming well past the hip. Again, the contralateral side, so the right arm and the left leg are in sync. If he has a shoulder issue and he's short on his arm stride, good chances he'll be short on his leg stride because of the harmonious rhythm of the upper extremity and lower extremity. So again, if you see one of your athletes who's running and they're really choppy, pay attention to what their arm swing is on the back. In most cases, most younger athletes, high school, middle school age, they're not driving back far enough with this arm, and so they get a real choppy look to their sprint. Pay attention to what's happening at the arms and look at multiple views. Look at a side view, look at a straight ahead view. Looking at different views or planes will tell you a lot about what the athlete is doing. So now I've gone through these these stages of the sprint cycle at top end speed. Now look at the application here to somebody playing football. This is when Von Miller, he had a strip of a player in the field of play. I think he took it from a tight end or a wide receiver, and he just started taking it the other direction. He took it for about 40 yards, got tripped up at about 5-7 yards out. But at the end of the day, we see a similarity of positions. Look at what's happening in the left arm. The humerus is driving up and back, and look what's happening at the right hip. And if you look what's happening here, these are things I didn't have to teach Von Miller. We do drills to help influence these positions, but at the end of the day, when these guys go to put force into the ground, if they've done enough contextual drilling, a lot of these positions just tend to happen. Again, I'm not teaching my pass rushers to be a sprinter. I'm teaching sprint quality, allow the guys to be more efficient in their training process. Again, Von just happened to hit these great positions on this fumble recovery. So now looking at this is a 300-pound defensive lineman. Let's look at the same kind of things that are happening. Top end speed, he's pushing off. We have the residual. We have the backside recovery where the knee is bending, and then we have the knee folding right up underneath as he gets to thigh punch position. Look how clean his knee folds. If you have an athlete who's dealing with an injury, that knee typically won't fold that clean. Again, watching athletes come back from ACL injury a lot of time, you'll see that they block at the knee because their brace has put them in that position to block early. They won't get that clean, sweet flexing of the knee and then snap of the thigh forward. But again, this is a 300-pound athlete, ear, shoulder, hip, knee, and ankle. The key to running with good sprint mechanics keeps your athletes healthier with soft tissue injuries in the context of training. We can't stop every injury that happens in practices and in games, but at the end of the day, there should be none in training, and that's why you've got to teach the right mechanics in the training side. Now, these are drills that help chunk part of the issues. This is Christian McCaffrey when he was in high school. So we're just working on heel slides right here. This is a drill where it just teaches him how to fire quicker up to his rear end. When we're at top end speed and that leg is drifting back, you have got to be able to fire fast and reflexively to get the heel up to the rear end. One of the biggest things here that allows that to happen for Christian is his arm action. Driving the arms back with good speed and rhythm helps pop the leg up at the same time. Again, posture, position, placement, and patterning. If I were to be picky on this drill, he's a little too high on his toes. And that's something we worked with him over the years, was getting more on the ball of the foot and not too high on the toes. When athletes get too high on their toes, it becomes a problem long-term with adductor issues. It can become a long-term with ankle range of motion, and also any athletes that deal with a lot of like fourth and fifth metatarsal fractures and or turf toe. So, get your athletes on the ball of the foot. And that's one thing I think we've done a really nice job with over the years, was getting them back to the really striking ball of the foot on the forefoot. Now this is a step over drill. Now we're taking it to something that looks a little bit more like what we saw on the treadmill. He's cycling the leg and bringing the foot out in front and striking back under the hips. Posture, position, placement, and patterning. I'll go a couple more views here. Pay attention to the rhythm of the arms. The rhythm of the arms will help dictate the rhythm of the legs in drills like this. Again, I do remove the arms at different times in training, but then you want to bring them back in so they can influence the rhythm and the speed of motion. And then this is just a bigger exercise that I do that's a top end speed skip where the athlete's trying to snap back underneath the hips. This is a great hamstring strengthening exercise. It's great for hamstring and glute co-contraction. He's bringing the thigh up. Again, posture is priority, position, placement, patterning, and snapping the leg back and through underneath the hips. Now do all the right things from the wrong positions. This is something that I typically talk about with athletes. We can do all these great drills. We can do all these great things. And I can work on these drills that provide context. But if I haven't shown you how everything that I just showed on acceleration and top end speed leads into change of direction, then we're being short-sighted. This is during the NFL lockout. I had 60 athletes at this workout. This is Brady Quinn leading the bunch here. And this is just a side shuffle drill for 5 yards where the athletes decelerated. And when they decelerated, they came out of this in acceleration. So when he decelerated, he stuck, and then he went the other direction for a 15-yard sprint. But all the while, all the angles have to match up to everything that we work on in acceleration. The cool thing about this picture is you can see all different position groups, from linebackers to fullbacks to linemen in the back, who are all running into the same positions of setup of deceleration. And ultimately, when they come out of this, they're going to be hitting the same angles that I was talking about in linear acceleration. So here's a drill that I implement that ultimately helps transition. If this is a defensive player and you're working at a lateral movement into drop and attack, watch how this is a drill I call gas and brake, or brake and gas. He's going to brake on the right foot, boom, brake, and then he's going to go right into punch drive of acceleration. All those same concepts that we just built in our linear acceleration models, they apply in change of direction. Whether this drill is him going forward toward the line of scrimmage or him dropping back into coverage, it doesn't matter. He's going to utilize the same mechanics to get there. This is why it's extremely important to tell your athletes it's not just about speed for the 40-yard dash, but this is ultimately about speed for any of your change of direction on-field play. Again, one more time. And what I do is I'll play around with this. I'll make this drill a 4-hurdle drill. I'll make it a 3-hurdle drill, a 2-hurdle drill. I may put 7 hurdles out, tell him to go, and then tell him on my clap to brake and then gas. Most people, when they change direction, what do? They decelerate on 2 legs. I want my guys to win. I want my guys to be quicker in change of direction. So I say, while one leg is braking, the other leg is gas. Brake gas. And if you look at the force application that he has, he's driving back and behind himself to accelerate. Acceleration principles all happen regardless of a change of direction drill, backwards or forwards. These principles, or these models that I talk about in training, they hold true for every position, for almost every sport. The biggest thing you have to pay attention to if you're working with athletes of multiple sports is what's their surface they're on. If I'm on a field turf like this, I know it's got a pretty good stick to it, and I'm going to be able to brake and gas pretty efficiently. But if I'm on wet grass, I might have to gather step to 2 feet and then accelerate, punch, and drive. You have to pay attention to the field that you're on, what the coefficient of friction is for that field. Is it slick? Is it sticky? If it's sticky, I can brake, gas, punch, and drive, get out a lot quicker. If you're looking for more of these, this is that was just a little bit of a tease, if you will, of how I look at change direction, acceleration, and speed. Those things are all teachable, and this is a book that I've put up here. That if you guys are looking for more of these concepts or these concepts with verbal or with text applied to it, this is a reference that you can use that has a lot of the drills and even more drills than I showed previously. But ultimately, the goal in all these drills is not how many drills I do. Okay, I showed probably 15, maybe 12 to 15 drills throughout this presentation. At the end of the day, it's not how many drills you do, but how well you do these drills. When I look at change of direction, this drill right here, this is simplistic. Teach him to decelerate, teach him to accelerate. However you want to build those for your different position groups, that's huge. Just understand those same concepts of acceleration can be applied for every position group. But don't get caught in the weeds. Just teach them the acceleration and the top end speed and let the athletes find the positions on their own, because a lot of times they will. If they're having a hard time, I'll tell an athlete on a drill like this, hey, this is just like what we did on Monday when we worked on pure acceleration. I want you to punch and drive after you stick on the right foot. Once I provide the context of this is a learned skill that you already know, it makes it really easy for the athlete. Again, don't get caught up in how many drills, just get caught up on the drills at which you do. One more time on the book here, All Pro Performance Training. This is a book that I was asked to write about combine training, but I was like, I don't want to write a book on combine training. I want to write a book on performance training. And oh, by the way, you just happen to get faster, more explosive in the process. So a lot of my models, a lot of my philosophies are in this book. So again, enjoy. I hope that you've enjoyed the presentation. I know I'm getting close to the wire here on my time. I want to thank you guys for your attention. Thank you for, it's always hard to present when you don't have a live audience to pay attention to engagement. I hope I spent enough time to really break down my philosophies of making this thing simple. A lot of coaches just put cones out and say run and think that the athletes are going to get faster. And they might to a degree, but at the end of the day, you've got to do things right. And the drilling and then the application to the real deal is what really solidifies it. You have to provide context of how to do the locomotion drill of your choice, whether it's acceleration or top end speed. Provide the drill that gives context to how you want them to do the real deal. Once they start doing the real deal, never tell them how it needs to happen on the field of play, because it will take care of itself. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you guys. And good luck to everybody in the coming season. And thank you for everything that you guys do for the athletes who are making their way to us.
All right, fantastic. Coach Landow, thank you so much. And I don't think you have to worry too much about people being engaged. Okay. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it felt like a live audience the way you were doing it. So congratulations on everything. Congratulations on your new book. And as Coach Landow mentioned, All Pro Performance Training available for purchase at us.humankinetics.com/Blitz. And all Blitz attendees exclusively get a 40% discount when purchasing the book and using the code Blitz, all caps, 40, the number 40, Blitz 40. So that's us.humankinetics.com/Blitz. And then use the code Blitz 40 to get a 40% discount. Coach Landow, thank you so much. This promotion will only be good until March 12th, and the code is only valid on the ordering website below. So you'll want to jump on this amazing deal right now. All right, let's give you a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back and continue on here at Blitz 21.